Hello and welcome to another special program featuring the services of our Lewis and Clark County government. With me today in the studio are two distinguished staff members from the county, Jenny Garcia, who's the coordinator of public information and public outreach for the county, and Christian Leonard, who's in charge of weed control. You're representing the Weed Control District, and a governmental entity.
Yes.
So our task today is to talk about weeds, noxious weeds, not just nuisance weeds, and you can tell us what the difference is. So let's start with, Jenny, you can lead us off about why we're talking about weed control now in the springtime, early springtime of 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. Now is the time to be on top of it. Weeds can get transferred in a lot of different ways. Humans are a huge vector through a lot of ways, whether it's driving vehicles through fields and picking up weeds and spreading them. Animals, both domestic and wildlife, can pick up the seeds and spread them. If it's growing in fields of hay or other feed, they can get transported that way. Animals eating them and transporting them. Flooding, that we've been talking about flooding a lot here in the county, and last year's flooding really creates a cause for concern because those seeds can get transported with the water to a variety of places, riparian areas and wetlands. And so and I'm sure Christian can interject some more, but there's just a lot of ways they can get spread, and it's everybody's responsibility. State law does say that property owners need to take care of the weeds on their property, and we've got a lot of great resources that Christian can talk about.
Well, I'm glad you brought that last point up. This is not just a government problem or issue. This is on all of us. If we're property owners, we have a legal obligation, as you say, under state law, to deal with certain kinds of weeds. So let's talk about what is it about these particular kinds of weeds, and you can start to enumerate what they are. We all know we have weeds in our yard, we have weeds in our fields, we have weeds everywhere, but some of them are more problematic than others. So what's the problem?
Yeah,
with
weeds? The flooding that occurred last year, some of the top weeds that we have there would be like Canadian thistle, leafy spurge, horiolisum, white top's a bad one, and hound's tongue and spotted knapweed. Those are ones that you could probably expect to be spread from the areas that flooded due to the weeds that grow within those riparian areas. So yeah.
So what is it about those particular types of weeds that are generally categorized as noxious weeds, as distinct from a nuisance weed like a dandelion or something like that?
Yeah.
What is it? Why are they such a problem that needs to be managed?
Yeah.
They some of them look pretty. Some of the time.
Yeah. So nuisance weeds are just weeds that are just problematic. They might not look very good, like kochia or dandelions and stuff like that. Noxious weeds are actually go through a process to be deemed noxious. So they are government regulated plants in which that we are responsible of taking care of.
Often brought over from other countries. They're not native to the United States. And so we don't have, they're not native to this ecosystem, and so they can promulgate and take off and overtake all of our native species and cause some real problems.
Yeah, so can we call them invasive species?
Yes,
they are. Plant variety?
Yes,
so
most of them are labeled invasive species.
So they have these ultra competitive capabilities, thus crowding out.
They can outcompete
plants that we would otherwise like to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, outcompete our native species. So,
yeah,
which is what we don't want.
Well, you're in the business of managing weeds. Can you just say a word about the Weed Control District? A lot of people may not know what that is and why it exists, but you're representing that branch of local government.
Yeah, the state government wanted to put together weed districts among all the counties, and it's our duty to help landowners manage and become good stewards of the land.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit later about who you collaborate with, especially in Lewis and Clark County. There's a lot of people that homeowners and property owners can go to in addition to yourselves. And we've talked earlier off the set about, you and your colleagues at DNRC, the State Department of Agriculture, the Forest Service, maybe some others. You're all kind of like guidance counselors for property owners because you have access to all these informational resources to help them do the right thing, be responsible.
Yeah, and all those entities also have to manage their own lands and properties as well, like Forest Service and DNRC and your private landowners do all those kinds of, they got to manage their weeds.
And it can be quite complicated. I mean, there's so much to it. It's when you do it, how you do it. There's a lot of different avenues, and that's where there are these resources. For example, the county weed district, they have people like Christian that know their weeds. Lots of resources, brochures. You go down to the weed district office, and there's all kinds of brochures with pictures of what weeds look like and things on how to manage them. The weed district also has equipment rentals, spray rentals, lists of certified contractors that can help if you can't do it yourself. I mean, all kinds of resources, so people don't have to go it alone, which I think is a great resource for the public to know that it's there and available to them.
Yeah, and I imagine there's some risk to not availing oneself of these informational resources, human resources, because let's say I just sort of ignore your help and I decide, well, I'll do it myself. I'll go down to such and such store and buy some herbicides and spray them and call it good. But that could be a mistaken approach. So let's talk about how one manages weeds. What are the methods by which, there's more than one method to do this. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. It's called Integrated Weed Management System, and that's what the state has put within the law, and that's something that we try to help people develop. There's mechanical, which is like mowing or cultural, pulling weeds, biocontrol, which is actually taking biocontrol agents that are approved to then put on the plants, the invasive plants.
Would that be like bugs?
Yeah, bugs.
Okay.
Yeah, bugs
Goats?
and goats. Yeah. So herbicide, that's one of the bigger ones, and then revegetation is also a big part of that. So like seeding mixes back that are trying to get back to native forbs and grasses, or something that's more desirable for maybe a rancher or a farmer. So
now, is one of those methods demonstrably better than another, or is it really a matter of location and condition of soil, water? Why would I choose biocontrols over herbicides, for example, if given the choice?
So, biocontrol agents become real helpful with very large patches. Like we like to have patches that are above 4 or 5 acres at least that much, so that we can then go into the middle of the patch and put in our biocontrol agents, and then let them be established, and then eventually just keep spraying herbicide around the edge, so that way we're not putting out as much herbicide in the environment, nothing more than what we need. So then allow that to take over, because it can become an expensive cost to landowners or entities.
Yeah. So herbicides are not cheap.
No, and the best way is to have more than one method. Attacking a plant in multiple different kinds of ways. Whether you're doing, you're mowing them down before they seed, and then spraying them. We try to get more than one method in each plan, if possible. So, it's really hard to spray next to water or high water marks. So, you gotta, like I said, it can become a pretty complicated process when we go through that. So.
And sometimes it's as simple as just pulling them.
Yep.
I live in town. I've lived in the country, where I sprayed and did multiple methods. Now I live in town where I don't have that much, and I can go out there and just pick them and get rid of them that way. So
yeah, I have to admit, I pull a lot of weeds too. And even on a larger property, there's something I don't know, rewarding in pulling the weed the right way. You know,
Yeah.
you got to wear the gloves and you got to get the root, and you don't want to just take the top off. And when you get a lot of that done, there's a sense of victory, like I
Oh,
beat
yeah.
back the weeds. And as a property owner, not a big one, but you know, I'm familiar with this myself, the responsibility that goes with having rural property, and weeds are like the #1 challenge. And I have to say, you know, people like yourselves have been very helpful and instructive, because like you say, it is complicated. It's science. These chemical combinations are,
Yeah.
you know, way over my head.
Yeah.
But following instructions, I can say I know what it looks like and feels like to be winning the battle against noxious weeds.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of concerted, consistent effort. It takes help from experts.
Yeah.
But there is a good sense of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it pride, but accomplishment
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you know it's working. So before we leave the subject of the methodology, I mean, a lot of people these days, you know, they're very environmentally conscious, or they're trying to be
Yeah.
good environmental stewards. And the earlier program we had featuring the county had to do with, you know, groundwater and water problems. So there's got to be a nexus between these chemical applications and water. Can you tell us a little bit about what people need to keep in mind on that score?
Yeah, you bet. The biggest thing you want to do is before you purchase any chemical is make sure that you flip it over and you read the label on the back. You know, that is your right to be able to flip that over and peel it and look at the labels to see whether or not the target weed you're trying to get is even within the weeds listed. What kind, you know, whether or not you're able to use it next to water, or if you know you have groundwater, you know, how, you know, does it permeate through the soil and all those things. So that the biggest thing is to make sure that you read your label, to make sure that you're accomplishing your goals, and to also make sure that you are wearing the proper personal protective equipment
Right.
while applying this herbicide as well.
Yeah,
So
'cause some of the sprays you should be having like a mask and gloves and a hat and all that.
yeah,
jazz.
exactly. You know, so with the big part of that, you know, the label's the law. So you have to follow that.
Can people come to you collectively, with questions about that? Because I can just imagine going into like a big hardware store, a place that sells these chemicals for getting rid of weeds, and yeah, looking at the label, and I forgot my glasses, so you know, there's no way I'm gonna actually learn. You know, I'll just look at it,
Yeah.
but I'm not really taking it in. So, long way of asking the question: do you have that information kind of readily at hand? So if I have a question about this particular herbicide, will it work against leafy splurge, or you know, one of the other?
Yeah,
You guys
we
have that
Yeah, we
information.
have. We have that kind of information to come and help, and we also don't have a problem with going out to your property and helping you assess your property and go through it too. You know, you may have misidentified a plant and thought it was leafy spurge, but it was something else. So then it might not even be an issue for you. That, or we can definitely help, and that helps give us a better idea too of what's going on, so that we can help you develop a 5-year management plan through the county, and we can always help, and that's always a fluid document that we can, you know, change through the years.
Yeah, that sounds great, especially the field visits to
Yeah.
get a hands-on look with an expert.
Yeah, we like to see progress too.
Yeah.
Feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, we've got about a minute left. You know, we're talking about this in the spring, flood season, and that's a major carrier of weed seeds. What about other questions of timing? You know, is this the only time someone should be trying to manage their weeds, or is it a year-round process?
It is a year-round process. You know, but there's a lot of things that come into that. You know, what kind of weed are you spraying? The weather outside and how it's doing, you know, whether it gets really dry in the summertime where plants really aren't doing much, that are we're trying to target weeds in which really uptake, you know, herbicide in the fall. So, you know, that's that becomes part of your weed management plan, you know, on these weed, you know, on these certain weeds we want to do, you know, we want to spray it at the springtime, you know, like cheatgrass. We want to be spraying that now. Getting those things taken care of, you know, or, you know, we're taking care of Canadian thistle. You know, we could probably wait till the fall and where it's really starting to uptake herbicide. That way we're able to neutralize the whole patch of Canadian thistle. So, yeah, I mean, those are sort of some of the things that we do and we tweak within your weed management plan.
Well, thanks both of you, Jenny and Christian,
Yes,
for
thank you.
telling us what we need to know about weed management. The time is ripe
Yeah,
to get out
it's
there.
that time of
and,
the year.
And it's not a one-time deal, like you mentioned, a 5-year plan. It's a very engaging prospect to deal with weeds. I can say that from direct experience. You know, it sounds like a problem, but it's actually kind of energizing to get out there and attack them.
Yeah.
With the right tools.
Yes.
And with the right information. So thanks again for informing the public about a very important matter of life and the quality of life in
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark County. So join us again next time when we have interesting people from local government telling us what we need to know about being responsible citizens. Thanks.